Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the marketing podcast that I'm doing with Alessandro. So, this week we are going to be getting into a theory of storytelling and how we can use that to engage our clients. But before we do that, I just thought I would introduce myself in case you're new to the podcast or the feed. My name is Simon Batchelor. I'm a marketing consultant and I've been running a marketing agency for over 21 years now. And I've also written a book called Reframing Marketing, which is all about how to do ethical and effective marketing. So, Alessandro, do you want to give us an intro as well?
Hello, everyone. My name is Alessandro, and I'm based here in Brighton. I mainly help two groups of people, like professionals, in particular consultants, coaches, accountants, and solicitors, and tech companies, to really build their confidence in three main things. The first, to understand who is their ideal client, but also what language they speak, their ideal clients, and why they should choose you as a professional or tech company. Most of the time, the three main points allowed us as a professional tech company to boost revenue, to reduce the marketing costs, and to become the go to expert.
Thanks, Alessandro. So, this week we're going to be talking about how we can establish the client as the hero in their journey. So, Alessandro, for those listeners who may not have heard about this idea of the hero and the journey, do you want to explain a little bit about what that's all about and how those two kind of characters are placed in the story?
So, linking to like the previous two videos that we look at the empathy is very, very important because when we communicate with another person, can be like on a social media post, but also when we have a conversation with another person. We want to listen the other person. Let's say that I'm a consultant and the other person is a prospect, a potential client, or an existing client. I want to make the other person feel comfortable, good enough to share with me their problems and they want. Because when you put the other person as the hero, the person that is gonna explain the situation, the problem, the aspirations, the other person feel heard from us, and they are more likely to share their problems, but also to build the trust in us. So allowing the other person to be the person that maybe spend 80% of the conversation to talk about their problems, aspirations, and what they want to achieve is really, really important to build a lot of trust, a lot of familiarity, and there are all other like advantages that we can discuss in more depth. But making the other person heard, seen, and understood by listening is really, really important.
Yes, and I think the idea that focusing on the other side of the story. So, in the previous video, we've spoken about taking the client's perspective and why that's important. But this is sort of how you go beyond just taking the client's perspective, but also positioning them throughout all of your marketing as being the person who's going to either get the most out of the product or service, or the person who's going to make the change that they seek to make. So this is essentially, rather than saying, well, I'm going to do all this work and I'm going to deliver all these great things for you, which puts you as the hero and them as the kind of sidekick or the companion, it's better to flip it round and say, well, actually, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And the reason you're going to do that is because I'm going to guide you. So
Yes.
this works particularly well in coaching and consulting, but I've also seen it work really well just thinking about products and services. And it uses, I think, a lot of what we've already spoken about with the needs, the wants, and the customer perspective. And this is a sort of way of wrapping that all up together into a story that you can tell about the product and service that you're offering. But you do so in a way that you sort of tell the person who's reading, watching, or listening to your marketing material about what journey they're going to go on. But in doing so, you make sure that they're the center of that story and you're just there to help them along the way. So, if we think about that, Alessandro, have you got any ideas about how you go about doing that, about how you go about making the customer that hero?
If we think about the content, so at the beginning I discussed we can make the other person the hero during a conversation or even like a social media post. If we focus on the second, the social media post, I noticed a lot of engagement on social media posts that they were not using I, but they were using we, or also like the name, they were calling out the name of their avatar or ideal client. So a way to create not just the trust, as I described at the beginning, but also engagement is to call it out the person that we are trying to help with and using the storytelling. So simplicity, let's call the simplicity that was one of the 5 criteria that we previously discussed in the other video, is one of the ways. So having a clear process, a process where they started, where they want to be, and what are the problems by using the storytelling, but also using a very simplistic way to explaining their journey. Because most of the time we try to be very smart by using jargon, using a lot of things that we might be familiar, but not the other person. So if I read a social media post that I don't feel really comfortable reading, or maybe I can't really understand, I move to the next one. So it's very, very critical to have a very clear structure about where they are now, where they want to be, and what are the obstacles, using the storytelling to tell this story, but also using simplicity, not just the organization, but also the simplicity. So this allowed you to create the trust, but also the engagement.
I think that's a really good way of thinking about the sort of structure of how that works. And I think when you do that, it gives your content or your website or your offer, it gives it a quality that makes it much easier to share, and it makes it much easier to recommend, because you're, in essence, as a customer, let's say you're a prospective customer and you find this product or service and you think, oh, I know someone else who's just like this. I'm going to share this thing with them. And if you feel like the hero in that story that you've just read, if you share it, you're sharing the ability for someone else to feel like the hero. And that feels good.
Mhm.
Whereas if we take the more traditional hard sell angle of marketing, where we're saying, buy my thing, it's $199.99, runs out in 4 hours, all the pressure selling nasty tactics, it's hard to share that, because what you're selling is pressure. What you're selling is, here's someone else's sales pitch. And it's almost like you're having to endorse that sales pitch, which not a lot of people like doing. It's a really, weird thing to do. I can't think of the last time I shared a sales page, but I can think of lots of times where someone has come to me and said, oh, Simon, do you do this? Or can I work with you on that? And I can sometimes say, yes, I work with people on this. But quite often I'm able to say, no, I don't, but I know someone who does. And the person I recommend to is
Mhm.
always someone who's really good at talking about the client as if they're the hero, because I know that when they read that person's website, when I refer them on, that person's going to feel good, that initial impression that they get of the person I referred to is, I can
Mm.
see why someone has referred me to this person, because I feel good about this initial impression.
Absolutely. I think even like in terms of conversations, it's really, really important to make the other person the hero of the conversation. Because when I say, for example, help professional or tech companies to save on marketing costs, they say, how do you do that? And my biggest strategies is very simple. If you make the other person the hero of the conversation, they feel good, they maybe also get a result. They start recommending you as a person, you as a Simon, or your product or service to someone else. So they are doing marketing for you, but for free. So you're not gonna spend any money. You are just competing on results, just competing on value rather than like price. So what you're doing, you're putting them as the hero, but they also help you to market your product, your service, or you as the professional to someone else. So it's not just in terms of the content, but also the conversation. When you have a conversation that at the end of the day, I feel so good having a chat with Simon, I'm going to recommend you to someone else. So you are going to save, as Simon, as the professional, a lot of money. That is a really good point to take into consideration for the verbal conversation rather than just the written one.
And I think so many products these days are sort of driven by that referral and recommendation and its trust, especially now, as we've seen with lots of AI generated content, increasing amounts of products that look tangible but might look a bit too good to be true. Especially, I
Mhm.
think, with this sort of changing world of content, actually a human connection and a human recommendation goes a really long way, and I think stands for a lot. If you can encourage or facilitate the recommendation by your clients or even prospective clients to other people, then, as you've said, that saves you a lot of money in just paying for advertising. But also, I think, especially in coaching consulting, having a referral or a recommendation means that the clients that come to you are more likely to be the right fit because they've been recommended by someone who's worked with you. And again, this just means they're easier to work with. They probably see and recognize the value that you're delivering. So they're not so price conscious. They're very much more focused on what is the tangible output or value that I'm going to get from working with you. They've already had that value recommended, enthusiastically described by the person who's done the referring. So, yeah, I can see how that works. So if someone's sitting watching this thinking, okay, I like the idea of this, but how do I change my thinking so that I can make my client the hero in their journey? What would be your piece of advice for someone in that situation?
The top advice I would say, make the other person the hero of the conversation, but guide them. I see a lot of people that they make the mistake that you are the expert. Your potential client, your client, or the other person is not the expert because they have a problem. They came to you to help, to be supported for the problem. So you need to make the other person the hero, but you need to be the director of the conversation, guide them. If you notice that they are moving to a direction that they cannot get the result, you need to steer the conversation, pivot to something that allow them to get the results. So my biggest suggestion is to think about 3 points: where they're now, where they want to be, and the obstacles. And use a language that allowed them to see the transformation. But guide them through this transformation, this journey, rather than letting them to decide what to do, because otherwise they don't get the result that they expect.
I think that's a really great way of summarizing those 3 steps, because I think if you can get clear on those 3 steps, even just for yourself, then the way you start talking about what you do, who you do it for, the benefits of working with you will all change to be customer centric. So, yeah, I think that's a really great way of getting inside the story and flipping who is the hero in that story. So if you have any questions for us or any comments, do let us know in the comments below. Or if you'd like to ask us any questions, then please do get in touch with us on LinkedIn. I will put both of our LinkedIn profiles in the description of this episode, so you can find us there. So until next time, thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.